Shalom and welcome to Torah portion Teitzei. My name is Peter and this is my son,
Kellen.
and we are here to encourage you to read God's written word, Torah, in Hebrew, and in so doing get closer to God's living word, Yeshua. Teitzei has more commandments than any other Torah portion, 70, and it covers a wide range. We'll be touching on a few of those, but certainly not all of them today. Read, buy, and memorize. If you're seeing one of our videos for the first time, stop, go back to the beginning, back to Bereshit, and also watch the video, How to Read Hebrew Starting Now. Both of those available at the videos page of TorahInMyHeart.com. I learned two very interesting things this week, one about Hebrew and one about English, and I want to share both of them with you. The first one about your Hebrew Bible. I've been studying Hebrew Torah for 7 or 8 years. I did not know this until this week, talking with Tim Haig, my pastor. And it all started because of this video by Mr. Breitowitz. Now, I saw this Power Minute, Why Jews Cannot Accept Jesus video by him, and we're going to show it here in a couple minutes. I also looked him up on the web because I want to know what's the qualifications of someone that's in a teaching video. Mr. Breitowitz graduated from Johns Hopkins University. He was ordained at Ner Yisrael Yeshiva, where he was recognized as having the ability to make complicated subjects understandable by others. He had a very quick mind. He went on to graduate magna cum laude from Harvard Law School. He taught, well, first he clerked for a U.S. District Court judge, and then he taught at University of Illinois Law School, and then got married, moved to Maryland, and taught in the University of Maryland Law School. And he's now Rabbi Emeritus at Woodside Synagogue in Maryland. So this guy is not only brilliant, but he's also a Torah scholar. When he talks about why Jews can't accept Jesus, this is authoritative. This is important, what he has to say. Now, before we watch his video, I'll tell you he says Jews can't believe in Jesus for two reasons. One, because either Jesus or Paul abrogated Torah. And now, as you know, if you've followed us, we believe that Jesus nor Paul abrogated Torah, but the church has been telling everybody for about 1,700 years that that's exactly what they did, so it's completely understandable that a Jewish person would think that. That Jesus or Paul did not abrogate Torah is much of the subject of my book, and I recommend you read that. And in fact, Hebrews chapter 8 says that in the new covenant, God's law will be written on our heart. That's quoted from Jeremiah 31, where it says God's law will be written on our heart in the new covenant. And the Hebrew word there for law is Torah. So it hasn't been abrogated. It's supposed to be written on our heart. Now, the other objection that Mr. Breitowitz has is that the Messiah, the idea of a Messiah taking, being God in a bodily form, as Christians say Jesus is, that is not allowable in the Jewish religion. And this is how I found out something interesting about the Hebrew Bible this week. Take Genesis chapter 18, for example. Verse 22, Vayifnu misham ha'anashim vayelchu Sodoma ve'Avraham odenu omed lifnei Adonai. Right? No problem. That's probably exactly what your Hebrew Bible says, or your English Bible would translate that as, and they turned from there, the men, and they went toward Sodom, and Abraham continued to stand before Hashem. Abraham continued to stand before Hashem. So this chapter talks about three men appearing to Abraham outside his tent. He runs to meet them. He feeds them. One of them is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. One of them is Hashem. Appears to be a man. And then later, right after this verse, verse 22, two of the men continue toward Sodom, but one of them remains, and that's Hashem. So this is very clear from a Christian mindset that, yes, God does appear in a bodily form. And that's could have been a pre-incarnate version of Yeshua. Before he was born as a baby, this could have been Yeshua standing before Abraham. There's several other instances of God appearing in a bodily form in Tanakh. Why would a Jewish scholar say they can't accept that? So this brings up something interesting. First, we'll take a look at this verse in particular. While talking about this with my pastor, Tim Haig, this week, he showed me his Bible, and this is a picture from his Hebrew Bible of the page with Genesis 18:22 on it. Underlined at top is this section of verse, and at the bottom is the note related to it. So here it is up close. You see that phrase, Ve'Avraham odenu omed lifnei Adonai, is surrounded by two small letter A's. That is covered in the text down at the bottom of the page. Tik sof lektorij ve Adonai ... Avraham. What does that mean? There's a website, truthonlybible.com, by Stephen Anderson, a man with several degrees. And he says, occasionally the reader of BHS, Biblia Hebraica Studartgensia, will come across a note which reads Tik Sof Lektorij. These abbreviations mean Tekune Sofrim, original reading. Tekune Sofrim means emendations of the scribes. It literally means they've corrected the writing. In this particular case, Genesis 18:22, Hashem was still standing before Abraham, was changed to Abraham was still standing before Hashem. In other words, if your Hebrew Bible is like mine, what we read in Genesis 18:22 was not the original. The scribes changed it. He says that it has to do with who's ministering to whom, and that's why the scribes changed it. Tim Haig has a different theory. He says that all the church fathers, quote unquote, quoted Genesis 18 as proof of God appearing in bodily form. And this was used quite a bit to argue for Jesus. Now, the rabbis will say that the Mishnah, the oral tradition, the Mishnah Gemara, which together are the Talmud, all existed and were complete before Yeshua, and then written down by Yehuda Hanisi, I think. But there's actually no written record of the Mishnah or the Gemara before it's either the 5th or 6th century. And what that allows is for the Jews to react to the Christian arguments from Genesis 18 and change the verse. In Jewish tradition, they say that ever since Genesis 15, when the smoking fire pot moved between the pieces of the covenant, and Abraham saw the smoking fire pot. That's the Shekinah of God. That's the glory of God. Abraham, whenever he sees God, he's seeing a Shekinah glory. So when the three men appeared in Genesis 18, Abraham wasn't seeing three men. He was seeing two men and the Shekinah glory of God. And that's how they can say that God did not appear in a bodily form. Now we'll watch Mr. Breitowitz's Power Minute, Why Jews Do Not Believe in Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus, of course, was a Jew. There's no question about it. And in fact, he was actually a disciple of some of the great rabbis of the Mishnah. There are really several problems with Jesus as Messiah. Number one is the fact that to the extent that either Jesus or maybe Paul after Jesus, this is kind of an open question, called for the abrogation of the commandments of the Torah, by basically saying that God replaced the covenant with Israel with a new covenant based on faith in Jesus, that is a violation of the fundamental idea that the Torah is eternal and the Torah will never be changed. So consequently, any religion that claims that the Sinaitic revelation has been superseded is by definition not acceptable to Judaism. That is point number one. And this is true even if Jesus is simply a Messiah figure as opposed to a divinity. Now, point number two is, and again, I'm not going to address the problem of whether this was Jesus' claim or a claim that was made later, but to the extent that Jesus is elevated not only as a Messiah, but is considered to actually be divine, to be God, then obviously any belief that says that God assumes a human form or a human body is treated as idolatry and a violation of the fundamental belief in the nature of God. So that would be a second reason that is unacceptable.
As I said, his two reasons. One, Jesus or Paul abrogated Torah. They did not. The church says they did. The church is wrong. My book explains it. And God cannot appear in a bodily form. And yes, he did. And he does in Genesis chapter 18, among other places. Now I want to show you something I learned about English this week, which is very interesting. Modern English relies more on auxiliary verbs and word order for the expression of complex tenses, aspect, and mood, as well as passive constructions, interrogatives, and some negation. Kellen, what did that mean?
Don't know.
So Kellen and I obviously were fluent speakers of English, and I think I only understood about half of that. And the thing is, if you're a fluent speaker, you don't need to know the rules. You just know how to say it right. But it gets even more interesting. This is an article called Order Force. The rule is that multiple adjectives are always ranked accordingly: opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, purpose. Unlike many laws of grammar or syntax, this one is virtually inviolable, even in informal speech. You simply can't say, "My Greek fat big wedding," or "leather walking brown boots." And yet until last week, I had no idea such a rule existed. There's another rule that also applies, and that's called Big Bad Wolf. Bad is an opinion and should therefore come first. However, this phrase is too busy obeying another rule, the rule of ablaut reduplication. Kellen, what is ablaut reduplication?
I have no clue.
I still have no clue. Other examples of the rule in action include chit-chat, sing-song, flip-flop, and hip-hop. When you shift vowel sounds for the effect this way, the vowels always follow a specific order: I, then A, then O. For example, big, bad wolf. Bad is an opinion. Big is an adjective relating to size. So it should be bad big wolf, but we don't say it that way because of I, A, O. So this is what we know by being a fluent speaker. And honestly, this is what kind of scares me about learning Hebrew, because imagine going to Hebrew college and getting your paper kicked back because you didn't follow a rule like this that you couldn't imagine. And crazy, but how much easier if you first get fluent in Hebrew and then go to college. And so that's what I'm hoping to do. Now Kellen will read some verses from Teitzei.
לא תראה את שור אחיך או את שיו נידחים והתעלמת מהם, השב תשיבם לאחיך.
In green I have lo tir'eh and then והתעלמת מהם. You shall not see and hide yourself from them. That's a phrase that's split up by the words in between. In red, et shor achicha, and that's a masculine, and also the et points to the direct object. So what is it? You shall not see the bull of your brother. O is or. Et seyo, and that's also masculine, and again the et pointing to the direct object again. So you shall not see either of those things. Nidachim. And notice nidachim is a nifal participle, masculine plural. So this has happened to these masculine things. They have been driven off, and the verb is used to describe them. So they are driven off, or they are lost, you could say, or abandoned, or without their owner. Hashev teshivim leachicha, you shall certainly return them to your brother.
You shall not see the oxen of your brother or his sheep driven away and hide yourself from them, but you shall certainly return them unto your brother. Ve'im lo karov achecha elecha ve'lo yedato va'asafto el toch betecha ve'haya imcha ad derosh achecha oto v'hashevoto lo.
In blue, I have some vavs that are referring to him. They mean him, the brother. And then in red, the final vavs and the haya in red, those are referring to the masculine animals we just discussed. And ve'im lo karov achicha, if your brother isn't near to you, elecha, or you don't know him, ve'lo yada'ato, vav meaning him, va'asafto, then you shall gather or add that male animal, that bull or sheep, el toch betecha, to the midst of your house, vehaya, that male thing shall be imcha, with you, ad derosh achicha, until your brother looks for it. Oto, that direct object, and then the vav. Vahashevoto lo, and you shall return it to him.
And if he is not near unto your brother, or you do not know him, then you shall bring it to the midst of your house, and it shall be with you until your brother seeks it, and you shall return it unto him.
And there's a story in Judaism about a man finding someone's chicken. So he puts a chicken into his barn, and the chicken is a really good producer, and they're selling the eggs, and after a while, they've got enough money to buy a sheep with the money they got from the eggs. So they buy a sheep, and this sheep grows up, and they're getting a lot of wool from it, and also it's a mom and has little lambs. They get wool from the lambs, and eventually they have enough money to buy a cow. And so they buy a cow, and they milk the cow, and the cow has calves, and eventually they buy a donkey. And then one day his brother, or the unknown person owner, comes looking for these animals, and they're able to return an entire barn full of animals to him.
וכן תעשה לחמורו, וכן תעשה לשמלתו, וכן תעשה לכל אבדת אחיך אשר תאבד ממנו, ומצאתה לא תוכל להתעלם.
And so shall you do to his donkey, and that lachamoro, that vav there is again his donkey. And so shall you do le simlato, for his garment. And so shall you do to any lost thing of your brother's. And now avodat is from the root avad, usually means destroyed, but in this case it means lost, and it's feminine. Avodah is a feminine noun, so it's a construct. Avodat achicha, any lost thing of your brother. Asher tovad, which is lost, and the tav prefix there is because it's a feminine noun, so it is lost. Mimenu, and the nu there is from him. Matzata, the hey suffix there referring back to the lost thing, the feminine lost thing. Lo tuchal lehit alem, you may not hide yourself. And that hitalem is the same one we had earlier. That's that hitpael. You may not hide yourself, reflexive form. Now, that's a kind of difficult phrase to translate, lo tuchal lehitalem. And whenever I run across difficult to translate phrases, I like to go to Young's, and because he's literal, and lots of times it makes sense. Lots of times the ESV or another version is clearer, but Young's will generally tell you just like it is. And here it's, thou art not able to hide thyself is literally what that means.
And thus you shall do with his ass, and thus you shall do with his garment, and thus you shall do with all the lost property of your brother, which he has lost, and you find it. You shall not hide yourself from them. Lo tir'e et chamor achecha o shoro noflim baderech, vehit alamta mehem hakem takim imo.
You shall not see, tir'e, second person, masculine, singular, because of the tav prefix, et chamor achicha o shoro. So, et pointing to the donkey of your brother, or shoro. And there, instead of saying of your brother, the vav suffix meaning of your brother, his bull. Noflim, and that noflim there is a masculine plural participle. So it's these things are fallen down. Nafal is the root, to fall, and it's a participle plural, so they're fallen down in the way. And then again our reflexive hitpael, vehit alamta mehem, and hide yourself from them. Hakem takim imo, you shall certainly raise them up with him.
You shall not see the ass of your brother or his oxen fall in the way and hide yourself from them, but you shall certainly raise him up.
I remember seeing a picture of a donkey under its burden, so I looked for a picture with Google, and I was surprised. There are a lot of pictures like this one. There are a lot of pictures of people abusing their donkeys and really expecting them to do too much. So here you have some people, looks like the guy in white at least, it's his donkey. And the guy on the motorcycle, now he's in the position. Here he's presented with a moral quandary. I have something to go do. I'm on my way there on my motorcycle. Do I stop and help this man with his donkey? Well, according to this verse, Hakem takim, you shall certainly raise it up with him. Today we're not likely to run into donkeys under a load, at least not in the United States, but we're more likely to run across this. Someone broken down on the side of the road. Now, maybe you would be leery about helping somebody, but think about it. This is what this commandment is saying for us, right? Like this is the modern interpretation is someone's car is broken down, you will help the man with his car. What about if it's at night? Then there's all kinds of risks at night. I retired after 30 years as a deputy sheriff, and we routinely would run into situations which could be frightening. And if one of our fellow officers died, we'd put a black tape over our badge until he was buried. And I wore that black tape many times over those 30 years. So this is what we had. This isn't our department's uniform, but when I retired, I had a vest like this with taser, pepper spray, gun, baton, extra magazines. I had a rifle in my trunk, and as you can see here, he has tape over his badge, meaning a fallen comrade, and I had a radio to call for backup. Most of you don't have all those things, so if you're going to run into somebody at night, that is a risk. You might consider getting a gun. And if you're leery about getting a gun, then I recommend the book More Guns, Less Crime. This was written by an economist at the University of Chicago. He looked at the numbers and he found that for every 1% increase in lawful gun ownership. There's a 4% decrease in violent crime. Now, I recognize a lot of people don't want to carry guns, but the thing is, if you're going to follow this commandment and you see somebody broken down at night, to protect yourself against a possible scam or people being violent, personally, I would carry a gun even though I'm no longer a police officer. And it's better, I think, to take the risk with a gun than to avoid the person and disobey the commandment.
לא יהיה חלי גבר על אישה, ולא ילבש גבר שמלת אישה, כי תועבת אדוני אלוהיך כל עושה אלה.
You shall not see chali gaver, and that's a word construct, masculine singular, the instruments of a man, of a mighty man. Gever today in modern Hebrew just means a man, but it comes from gavar, the root meaning to overwhelm or to be strong. And chali gever tends to make you think of instruments of war, arrows or spears, shields, helmets, but in context it means pretty much man's clothing. Al isha, on a woman, velo yilbash gever simlat isha. And there that's in pink because simla is a feminine noun, clothing. Maybe that's why they use chali for of a man, to avoid using a feminine word, simla. And then simlat isha is a feminine singular construct like Torat Moshe, the Torah of Moses. Simlat isha. So the clothing of a woman should not be worn by a man. Ki to'avat Adonai, and there's another feminine construct, an abomination of Hashem, your God, all who do this.
It shall not be the clothing of a man upon a woman, and he shall not be clothed the man with women's clothing, for it is an abomination to Hashem your God, all who do this.
Some people say that the only parts of Torah that apply today are those that are repeated in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament. This commandment is not repeated in the New Testament. So by that logic, it should be okay today for cross-dressing. And yet, it would be normal in the Christian church to say that is not appropriate. And then Kellen just brought up that many women wear pants, and his mom wears pants, and yes. And so that was actually a debate for centuries, and for most of history, women would not wear pants, and that happened basically in the last 100 years. So that's a concession we've made, a compromise we've made, and whether it's appropriate or not, that would be up for debate.
כי יקרא כאן ציפור לפניך בדרך בכל עץ או על הארץ, אפרוחים או ביצים, והאם רובצת על האפרוחים או על הביצים, לא תיקח האם על הבנים.
If you should find, and that's not correct, but I'll get back to that, the nest of a bird before you in the way. So that's the way translations usually translate it. If you find a bird's nest in the way, you see there it's, and that's the ESV says if you come across a bird's nest. But notice the yod prefix on kare is third person masculine, he. And that's because kan, nest, is a masculine noun. If he should happen, or if it should happen, a bird's nest before you, or chance to appear before you, is literally what it would be, because that kara is in the nifal, imperfect third person masculine. So it's happening to the nest. It's happening. It's occurring before you is the meaning. And Young's literal translates that when a bird's nest cometh. So once again, Young's literal shows you exactly, or pretty close, as close as I can see, to the Hebrew. And the other English translations tend to fudge it to make it more sense. B'derech bechal etz, in any tree, o al haaretz. Now I've got this al in green there and the other al's in green and the final al in red, and I'll explain that in a minute. On the earth, efrochim o vetzim, young or eggs. Ve'ha'em rovetzet al ha'efrochim o ha'betzim. And the mother is hovering or sitting on the young or on the eggs. Lo tikach ha'em al habanim. Keep that final al in mind right now, because every English version says you shall not take the mother with the young. All except one that I could find, which I think was, I forget, but it said you should not take the mother from the young, and that's not a better translation. We'll take a look at that after the next verse.
For if there happens before you a bird's nest in the way, whether in a tree or upon the ground, whether young or eggs, and the mother is sitting upon the young or upon the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young. Shaleach teshalach et haem ve'et habanim tikach lach למען ייטב לך והארכת ימים.
Shaleach teshalach, you shall certainly send away et ha'em, the mother, ve'et habanim, and the young you can take for yourself. And it's the feminine lach there, which is interesting, which often refers to men in Torah also, but that is the feminine form. In order that, lema'an yitav lach, it shall be good for you, ve'ha'arachta yamim. And again, the young says, and thou hast prolonged days, because that's a hefil perfect, and you have prolonged your days, second person masculine singular. This is considered the least commandment in Torah, to send away the mother bird before taking the young. And yet it's connected to one of the most important commandments in Torah by that phrase, and you shall prolong your days. And that is Exodus 20 in the Ten Commandments. Honor your father and mother, that your days may be long in the land that Lord your God has given you. And there's one other verse about honest weights and measures that will also lengthen your days. And in general, Torah says many times that obeying the commandments and the statutes and the judgments of Hashem will prolong your days. And the book of Proverbs says being wise will prolong your days. But the only specific ones, besides the weights and measures, are the setting the bird away and honoring your father and mother. What is it about that al that we looked at in red? How, if you were to go out right now and try to catch a bird, how hard would that be? Have you ever caught a bird? I'm going to go catch a bird, and then you just go catch one in your hands. It's impossible almost. Although I know a guy who said he's done it twice, but I think most people would say it's impossible. With one exception, and that's when the mother is on the young and she's defending them. And it's that motherly instinct which overpowers her wanting to flee. And it's honoring that mothering instinct that connects this verse with the phrase, and you shall prolong your days, to the commandment, to the fifth commandment. There's a really good video about this at aleph-beta.org on this Torah portion, Teitzei.
But you shall certainly send the mother away, and the young you may take for yourselves, in order that it may go well with you, and that your days may be prolonged. Ki tivne bayit chadash, ועשית מעקה לגגך, ולא תשים דמים בביתך, כי ייפול הנופל ממנו.
If you build a house, ki tivne bayit chadash, new, a new house. Ve'asita, and you have made ma'akeh, and that's a feminine noun for a parapet. Get to that in a minute. Legagecha, for your roof. And Gog is a masculine singular noun. Parapet, also masculine. Velo tasim damim bevetecha, and you shall not put blood guilt upon your house. If ki yipol hanofel, if should fall a faller. Nofel is the hanofel is a participle there based on nafal to fall. So it's if one who falls should fall. I wonder if that kind of implies someone who's kind of clumsy or, but anyway, the faller, yeah. Mimenu, and then the nu there meaning from the masculine thing, which would be from the roof. Here's a picture of a parapet. I grew up knowing about these because my grandmother lived in New Bedford, and there were lots of whaling stories in New Bedford, and they used to call these widows' walks.
For when you build a new house, you shall make a battlement across your roof, so you will not bring down blood upon your house if someone is to fall from it. Lo yavo amoni umoavi bikal Adonai gam dor asiri lo yavo lahem bikal Adonai ad olam. He shall not come an Ammonite or a Moabite into the assembly of Hashem, even to the 10th generation. They shall not come into the assembly of Hashem forever. Al devar asher lo kidmu etchem balechem uvamayim baderech betzetchem mitzrayim vaasher sachar alecha et Bilam ben Beor mi Petor Aram Naharim lekal lecha.
So the big problem with the Ammonites and the Moabites is they did not meet Israel when they were leaving Egypt with bread and water. Remember, Israel had 600,000 fighting men between the ages of 20 and 60. So that means about 600,000 women of the same age, plus those under 20 of both male and female, and those over 60 of male and female. Looking at between 2 to 3 million people. They did not come out with bread and water for 2 to 3 million people. This is implying very strongly that hospitality is extremely important and not something we can disregard.
On account that they did not meet you with bread and water on the way when you went out from Egypt. And they hired against you Balaam son of Beor from Petor Aram Naharim to curse you. Velo ava Adonai Elohecha lishmoa el Bilam vayahaphoch Adonai Elohecha lecha et haklala livracha ki ahevcha Adonai Elohecha.
And he was not willing. Avaz did not give consent. Lo, negating that. Hashem, your God, lishmoa, to listen to Bilam, vayahaphoch, and that's the root meaning to turn. The first time that appears is when God stations the angel outside the entrance to the Garden of Eden with the sword that turns back and forth. Hafach is the root used there. Adonai, your God, Hashem, your God, for you. He turned for you the curse to a blessing, for he loves you, Hashem, your God. And it's so interesting that not only did God turn the curse to a blessing, but as we play at the beginning of each of these Hebrew lessons, the Ma Tovu, that's the quote from Bilam, meant, hired to curse, but instead he blessed. And that should come as a warning to those who have tried to destroy Israel. Now today it's Iran, which is swearing to destroy Israel, wipe it off the map, and Hezbollah and Hamas. You'd think they would take a lesson from this, that all those others have been destroyed, and God turns the curse into a blessing. And the most modern example of this, or the most imminent right now, besides Iran or Hezbollah, is BDS, boycott, divest, and sanctions, all meant to get Israel out of the land, as they admit that is their real goal.
But he was not willing, Hashem your God, to listen to Balaam, and he changed Hashem your God for you, the curse into a blessing, for he loves you, Hashem your God. Lo tidrosh shalomam vetovatam kol yamecha leolam. You shall not seek their peace or their welfare all your days forever. Okay, I should go pause it.
Now, it's interesting that it goes on to say that the Egyptian and the Edomite you can allow into your congregation after about 3 generations, I think it is. So imagine the Egyptians were killing Israeli babies and enslaving the Israelites. And Edomites also met them and didn't give them bread and water. But maybe because they're a closer relative than the Ammonites and Moabites, I'm not sure. But you can allow the Egyptians in, but not the Moabites and the Ammonites. Wow. And Kel and I are reading the Zion Covenant series now by Bodie and Brock Taney, and we're in Munich Signature, which is talking about the MS St. Louis. In the book, it's called the Darien. And it's a ship of Jews, 900 Jews that left Nazi Germany trying to find refuge in some other country. They were turned away at England, and spoil alert for Kellen, because we haven't got to this in the book yet. They're also turned away from Cuba and the United States. They're sent back to Europe. About 700 of them eventually found refuge in European countries, some of them in France, so they might have got sent back to Germany when Germany took France. And some of them, about 200 of them, went back to Germany and probably were killed. So America turned back the ship, the MS St. Louis. The United States was unwilling to take 900 Jews away from death and give them hospitality. If the Moabites and the Ammonites can be cursed forever for not meeting 2 to 3 million with bread and water, what does that mean for the United States? That's a problem. You know, even today, Arabs really understand this hospitality, I think, better than almost anybody, as far as I know. In Leon Uris's book, The Hajj, he talks about the building of settlements in Israel before Israel became a state, so in the 20s and 30s. And his character, Gideon, is one of the ones who helps Jews build settlements. And of course, the Arabs hate this guy and they want to kill him. But what Gideon would do is he would sneak into an Arab village. And if he made it into an Arab village, which he always did, without them seeing him first, then one of the Arab families had to take him in for dinner, treat him as an honored guest, and give him safe exit from the town. If they found him on the road the next day, they'd try to kill him. But that is the kind of hospitality Arabs have, and you just don't see that in Western society. Now 3 verses from Isaiah 58. Halo, ze tzom evcharehu, pateach chartzubot resha, hater agudot mota, veshalach retzutzim chofshim, vechal mota tenateku. Halo is the interrogative hey with the patak and shva vowels under it. It means it's asking a question. And then lo is no, so is it not this, the fast which I have chosen? Ev charehu, chosen it. Tzom is a masculine noun. Pateach, to open or loosen the bands of wickedness. To break or release the bonds of the yoke, or the cords of the yoke. To send the crushed or the oppressed or the beaten free. Chofshim, to send them free. Vechal mota tenateku, and all bands or all bonds or cords you shall snap. And in red there, the hater, that's hefil, you shall cause them to be released. And in orange, tenateku, PL, you shall tear them, really rip them off, those bands. And every time I read this, I think about liberal attorneys, defense attorneys. And although I don't often agree with them, this is what they're committing their life to, is making sure that the innocent go free, that they don't get punished for their crimes. And that's certainly to be admired. Halo faros laraev lach mecha va'aniyim merudim tavi vait, ki tir'e arom vechisito umibsarcha lo tit'alam. Is it not to spread out to the starving, to the hungry, your bread, and for the poor and homeless to bring into your home? If you see the naked, to cover him, and from your flesh do not, and there's that hipa'el reflexive we had earlier, tit'alam, you shall not hide yourself from your flesh, which I guess in this context means another human, your neighbor, like Yeshua said, who's the man's neighbor? And doesn't this remind you of something else you've read in the Brit Chadashah? Because Yeshua said, for I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. And yeah, this is exactly the verse from Yeshayahu that they would be thinking of when he said that. Az yibaka kashachar orecha va'aruchatcha mahera titzmach vehalach lefanecha tzidkecha kavod Adonai ya'asfecha. Then shall break forth the light of your dawn, your light like dawn, and your health shall quickly sprout. And it shall go before you, your righteousness, and the glory of Hashem shall be your rear guard. And these words I've got in purple are all words that are like Yeshua. And this verse just rings of Yeshua. The dawn of your light, your healing. Titzmach is from Jeremiah 33, verse 15. In those days and at that time I will cause to grow up, and that is the root samach. To David a branch, and that's the noun samach, of righteousness. And Yeshua was the son of David, and this is considered a messianic verse. He shall execute judgment and righteousness in the earth, and here your righteousness and the glory of Hashem will be your rear guard. And Colossians says that Yeshua is the fullness of God, the fullness of God's glory in bodily form. So this is the promise that if you do these things, you take care of the poor and the naked and the hungry, and you don't turn them away like the Moabites and Ammonites did, your dawn shall break forth, and you'll have all these blessings. Now the Avinu and our closing video. Normally, Kellen or I will quote the Avinu at this point, but by now you should know it. And you can pause the video at this point if you want and see if you can quote it while looking at the screen. We're not going to read it today. I've been memorizing the words to Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, which in itself is like a prayer. In fact, has multiple references to Tanakh in it. See if you can pick them out. There's a beautiful video of Ofra Haza singing it for the 50th anniversary when Jerusalem was celebrating 50 years of statehood in 1998. All right, so until next week, and Torah portion Kitavo, Kellen and I bid you Shalom.
אוויר הרים צלול כיין וריח אורנים נישא ברוח ארבעים עם כל פעמונים ובתרדמת אילן שבויה בחלומה העיר אשר בדד יושבת ובליבה חומה ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור ירושלים של זהב נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני חזרנו אל בורות המים, לשוק ולכיכר, שופר קורא בהר הבית, בעיר העתיקה, ובמראות אשר בסלע, אלפי שמשות זורחות, ושוב נרד לים המלח בדרך יריחו. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני אך בבואי היום לשיר לך ולך לקשור כתרים, קטונתי מצעיר בנייך ומאחרון המשוררים.